Poem 1. King Lear and His Three Daughters by George Wharton Edwards. Summary. King Lear and His Three Daughters is a ballad by George Wharton Edwards, adapted from Shakespeare's play, King Lear. The ballad tells the story of King Lear, who ruled a peaceful land and had three daughters, Regan, Goneril, and Cordelia. He decides to divide his kingdom among them based on their declarations of love for him. Regan and Goneril use flattering words to win their father's favor, promising great devotion and care. Cordelia, however, expresses her love modestly, stating that her duty as a child is the extent of her affection. King Lear is disappointed by Cordelia's response, feeling that her love is lacking compared to her sisters. In anger, he banishes Cordelia from his court and divides his kingdom between Regan and Goneril. Over time, Regan and Goneril betray their father's trust, stripping him of his wealth and reducing his retinue, leaving him in a dire situation. Desperate, King Lear seeks refuge with his daughters, but both turn him away, leading him to wander the land in despair. His mental state deteriorates, and he becomes destitute. Eventually, Cordelia, now in France, learns of her father's plight and sends aid to bring him to her. She marries a noble king who supports her cause and provides assistance to King Lear. In a bid to reclaim his throne, King Lear returns to England with Cordelia's support and wins back his kingdom after a battle. Tragically, however, Cordelia dies in the midst of the conflict. Devastated by her death, King Lear passes away, having found solace only in her company. The ballad explores themes of filial love, loyalty, betrayal, and the consequences of pride and greed. King Lear's initial misjudgment of Cordelia's love, based on her understated expression, leads to his downfall. His older daughter's deceit and cruelty reveal their insincerity, causing suffering and chaos. Cordelia emerges as the true embodiment of love and loyalty, showing her genuine affection through her actions rather than empty words. The ballad's narrative also underlines the transient nature of power and the perils of vanity. King Lear's misplaced trust in his elder daughters exposes the fleeting nature of their loyalty and his vulnerability when they seize his assets. Cordelia, even as a queen, remains humble and committed to her father, becoming his source of redemption. Edwards' adaptation of Shakespeare's King Lear presents a condensed version of the tragic tale, focusing on the father-daughter relationships and moral lessons. Through poetic language, it conveys the emotional turmoil of characters, the consequences of their choices, and the ultimate triumph of genuine love over deceit. The poem serves as both a retelling of a famous play and a commentary on human nature, highlighting the importance of sincerity, humility, and the enduring power of love in the face of adversity. A. Multiple choice questions. 1. King Lear had three daughters and sons. A. 2. B. 3. C. 4. D. No. 2. King Lear's youngest daughter's name was A. Maria, B. Cordelia, C. Goneril, D. Regan. 3. The king disowned A. The eldest daughter, B. The middle daughter, C. The youngest daughter, D. None of his daughters. 4. Cordelia was married to the Prince of A. Denmark, B. France, C. Scotland, D. Spain. 5. To ask "Tell me how much you love me" is a question. A. Silly, B. Genuine, C. Diplomatic, D. Sincere. Extra MCQs. 1. King Lear and His Three Daughters is an adaptation of which of Shakespeare's plays? A. Macbeth, B. Romeo and Juliet, C. Hamlet, D. King Lear. 2. How many daughters does King Lear have in the ballad? A. 1, B. 2, C. 3, D. 4. 3. How does Cordelia express her love for her father compared to her sisters? A. With extravagant praise and flattery. B. With modesty and duty as a child. C. With expensive gifts. D. With grand gestures of affection. 4. Why does King Lear banish Cordelia from his court? A. Because she plotted against him. B. Because she was disrespectful. C. Because she betrayed him. D. Because he believed her love was lacking. 5. How do Regan and Goneril betray their father's trust? A. By stealing from him. B. By turning him away when he seeks refuge. C. By declaring war against him. D. By revealing his secrets. 6. Which daughter eventually sends aid to King Lear? A. Regan. B. Goneril. C. Cordelia. D. A neighboring queen. 7. What themes are explored in the ballad? A. Adventure and romance. B. Betrayal and loyalty. C. Science and technology. D. Politics and warfare. 8. What happens to Cordelia during the conflict to reclaim King Lear's throne? A. She becomes a queen. B. She marries King Lear. C. She dies tragically. D. She betrays her father. 9. What does the ballad suggest about the consequences of pride and greed? A. They lead to happiness and success. B. They have no impact on characters' lives. C. They bring about tragedy and suffering. D. They are virtues to be admired. 10. What is the significance of Cordelia's understated expression of love? A. It shows she is indifferent to her father. B. It leads to her banishment from the kingdom. C. It leads to King Lear's downfall and suffering. D. It demonstrates her insincerity. 11. What moral lesson does the ballad convey? A. The importance of vanity and self-importance. B. The value of empty words and flattery. C. The significance of sincerity, humility, and genuine love. D. The benefits of betraying one's family for personal gain. 12. What is the ultimate fate of King Lear in the ballad? A. He becomes a wealthy king again. B. He lives happily ever after. C. He dies in peace surrounded by family. D. He dies in despair, having found solace only in Cordelia's company. 13. What does Cordelia's loyalty and love for her father symbolize? A. The fleeting nature of power. B. The importance of wealth and status. C. The destructiveness of betrayal. D. The enduring power of genuine love and humility. 14. What is the role of Cordelia in the ballad's resolution? A. She becomes a ruler of a neighboring kingdom. B. She betrays her father for personal gain. C. She supports King Lear in reclaiming his throne. D. She becomes the main antagonist of the story. 15. How does King Lear and his three daughters differ from Shakespeare's original King Lear? A. It omits King Lear's daughters entirely. B. It focuses exclusively on King Lear's power struggles. C. It emphasizes the role of King Lear's sons. D. It presents a condensed version focusing on father-daughter relationships and moral lessons. B. Short questions. 1. How does the author introduce the king? In the ballad, King Lear and His Three Daughters, by George Wharton Edwards, the author introduces the king, King Lear, as a once powerful ruler of a peaceful land. He is depicted as possessing princely power and enjoying a life of contentment and joy. The author's portrayal emphasizes his regal stature and the harmonious state of his kingdom under his rule. King Lear's character is initially painted as benevolent and revered by his subjects. However, the author also reveals his role as a father, highlighting his relationship with his three daughters, Regan, Goneril, and Cordelia. It is through this familial lens that King Lear's character gains depth. His decision to divide his kingdom among his daughters is indicative of his desire to ensure their futures and assess their affections. This decision leads to the pivotal conflict in the narrative, showcasing both his paternal concern and his potential misjudgment. In this introduction, King Lear is portrayed as a figure of authority and compassion, both as a monarch and as a father seeking the expression of love from his daughters. This layered portrayal sets the stage for the subsequent events that shape the trajectory of the ballad's narrative. 2. What question was asked to the daughters by the king, and what was the purpose of the question? King Lear posed a question to his 3 daughters: which of you 3 in plighted troth, the kindest will appear? The purpose of this question was to determine the extent of his daughters' love and devotion towards him. King Lear, nearing the end of his rule, sought to divide his kingdom among his daughters based on their responses. By asking them to express their love openly, he aimed to assess the sincerity of their affections and make an informed decision regarding the distribution of his wealth and power. The question served as a test of their loyalty and allowed King Lear to gauge their intentions. He wished to ensure that his daughters would provide him care and support in his old age, and his query revealed his concern about his future well-being. This moment also highlights King Lear's vulnerability, as his decision would influence the stability of the kingdom and his personal relationships. The daughters' responses to this question set the stage for the subsequent unfolding of the narrative's conflicts and themes of love, betrayal, and familial dynamics. 3. What answers were given by the first and the second daughters? The first daughter, Regan, responded to King Lear's question with a flattering and exaggerated declaration of love. She assured him that her love was so profound that she was willing to sacrifice her own heart for his sake. Regan's answer was designed to appeal to her father's desire for affirmation and appreciation, aiming to secure a substantial portion of the kingdom for herself. The second daughter, Goneril, echoed similar sentiments in her response. She promised to undertake the most extreme of hardships to serve her father, including diligently caring for him day and night. Like Regan, Goneril's answer was an attempt to outdo her sister in expressing devotion and securing her share of the kingdom. Both Regan and Goneril's responses were insincere, driven by their ambitions to inherit the kingdom's riches and power. Their elaborate flattery aimed to manipulate King Lear's decision in their favor. These answers set the stage for the contrast with the third daughter's genuine and understated response, which ultimately leads to the central conflict and tragedy of the narrative. 4. How was third daughter's answer different from her elder sister's? The third daughter, Cordelia, responded to King Lear's question with stark contrast to her elder sister's elaborate and exaggerated declarations of love. Cordelia expressed her love in a modest and sincere manner, stating that her love for her father would be in accordance with her duty as a child. Unlike Regan and Goneril, Cordelia's response lacked flattery and showmanship. Her words revealed a deep sense of integrity and authenticity. Cordelia's answer stood out due to its simplicity and honesty. She refused to engage in empty rhetoric, choosing instead to convey her affection through genuine actions rather than grandiose words. This contrast highlighted Cordelia's moral integrity and genuine nature, as she remained true to her principles despite the potential consequences. Her response ultimately led to her banishment from her father's court, as King Lear misinterpreted her sincerity as indifference. This pivotal moment sets the stage for the unfolding tragedy, emphasizing the theme of authenticity versus deception and portraying Cordelia as a symbol of true love and loyalty in contrast to her cunning sisters. 5. Who married Cordelia? Cordelia, the youngest daughter of King Lear, married the King of France. After being banished from her father's court due to her honest response and refusal to engage in flattery, Cordelia sought refuge in France. There, her virtues and genuine nature were recognized by the King of France, who was impressed by her character and qualities. Recognizing Cordelia's worth beyond her material inheritance, the King of France chose to marry her. This marriage was based on a true appreciation for her sincerity and integrity, rather than the pursuit of wealth or power. The King of France saw in Cordelia a woman of exceptional character and honor, qualities he admired and respected. This marriage to the King of France not only served as a testament to Cordelia's virtue but also provided her with a new life and station, one that was built on mutual respect and genuine affection. Their union contrasts with the manipulative relationships of Cordelia's sisters, and stands as a symbol of the triumph of authenticity and love. 6. What did the first daughter Regan do to displease her father? Regan, the first daughter of King Lear, displeased her father by betraying his trust and acting against the principles of filial duty and respect. After King Lear had divided his kingdom between Regan and her elder sister Goneril, he sought refuge in their courts, hoping to find care and support in his old age. However, Regan's behavior proved to be hypocritical and cruel. Rather than offering her father the care he sought, Regan exhibited greed and a lack of compassion. She exploited her father's vulnerability and stripped him of his dignity and resources. Despite his kingly status, she reduced his retinue of loyal servants and neglected his well-being. This lack of empathy demonstrated Regan's insincerity in her earlier declarations of love and loyalty. Regan's actions revealed her true character as power-hungry and ruthless, willing to forsake her father's well-being for personal gain. Her betrayal added to the tragic chain of events in the story, contributing to the suffering and downfall of King Lear. 7. How did Goneril, the second daughter of the king, receive her father? Goneril, the second daughter of King Lear, received her father in a similarly disappointing and heartless manner as her sister Regan. When King Lear sought refuge and assistance from his daughters after dividing his kingdom, he turned to Goneril's court for help. However, like Regan, Goneril's actions reflected a lack of genuine care and compassion. Instead of welcoming her father with the kindness and respect he deserved, Goneril exhibited cruelty and indifference. She granted him only a minimal allowance of servants and resources, going back on her earlier assurances of devotion. This neglect and mistreatment revealed Goneril's selfish motivations and lack of filial duty. Goneril's actions mirrored those of her sister, betraying her father's trust and highlighting her own thirst for power and control. By treating her father, a once mighty king, with such disdain, Goneril contributed to the tragic events that unfolded in the story and demonstrated the corrosive effects of greed and deceit. 8. Describe how the king looked like after being humiliated by two daughters. After being humiliated and mistreated by his two elder daughters, Regan and Goneril, King Lear's appearance underwent a marked transformation, reflecting his deteriorating physical and mental state. His once proud and regal demeanor gave way to a disheveled and broken figure. His physical appearance mirrored the emotional turmoil he experienced due to the betrayal and cruelty of his own flesh and blood. King Lear's once majestic white locks of hair were now rendered untidy and unkempt, symbolizing his inner turmoil and the chaos that had befallen his life. His face bore the marks of emotional suffering, with tear stains and traces of blood, illustrating the depth of his pain and anguish. The weight of his disappointments and the wounds of his daughter's betrayal were etched upon his countenance. His posture likely shifted as well, perhaps showing a drooping stance, reflective of his heartbreak and the heavy burdens he carried. This transformation in King Lear's appearance showcased the toll of his familial relationships' collapse, turning him from a powerful monarch into a broken, grief-stricken man whose outward appearance mirrored his inner turmoil. 9. Did the youngest daughter fulfill her duty towards her father in France? Explain. Yes, the youngest daughter, Cordelia, fulfilled her duty towards her father in France. Despite being banished from her father's court for her honest and sincere response, Cordelia's actions in France demonstrated her unwavering love and loyalty. Cordelia recognized her father's plight and sent aid to bring him to her, providing him with comfort and relief. She married the King of France, not for material gain, but due to his recognition of her virtue and character. Cordelia's marriage allowed her to gather the resources and support needed to help her father regain his throne and kingdom. In this way, Cordelia fulfilled her duty by remaining true to her principles and demonstrating genuine care and compassion for her father. She took tangible actions to support him during his time of need, even if it meant going against her father's initial judgment and suffering the consequences of her honesty. Cordelia's actions reflect her deep commitment and love, highlighting her as a beacon of sincerity and loyalty in the narrative. 10. How did Lear and his daughters die? In the ballad, King Lear and His Three Daughters, the fate of King Lear and his daughters unfolds tragically. Cordelia, the youngest daughter, dies before King Lear. She perishes in battle while supporting her father's cause to reclaim his kingdom, fighting alongside him due to her love and loyalty. Her death is a poignant moment that underscores her unwavering commitment to her father and her principles of honesty and sincerity. King Lear, on the other hand, is devastated by Cordelia's death. Overcome with grief, he swoons and collapses upon her lifeless body. Unable to bear the loss of his beloved daughter, King Lear dies on Cordelia's breast, symbolically breathing his last in the embrace of the one who embodied true love and loyalty amidst the deception and betrayal of his other daughters. The deaths of King Lear and Cordelia mark the tragic conclusion of the story, emphasizing the themes of loyalty, authenticity, and the consequences of greed and deceit. Their deaths serve as a poignant commentary on the complexities of human relationships and the ultimate triumph of genuine love over falsehood. See long questions. 1. Was the question asked by the king to his daughters sensible? Give reasons. The question posed by King Lear to his daughters in the ballad, King Lear and His Three Daughters, can be considered both sensible and misguided, depending on the context and perspective. King Lear's question, asking his daughters to declare the extent of their love for him, reveals his desire to ensure their affection and care in his old age. This request is rooted in his role as a father seeking reassurance from his children and is sensible from that emotional standpoint. However, the question becomes problematic due to the superficial and arbitrary nature of the test. King Lear's method of assessing his daughter's love through their words is misguided because it opens the door for insincere flattery and manipulation, as demonstrated by the responses of Regan and Goneril. This leads to the downfall of trust and relationships within the family. Additionally, King Lear's decision to distribute his kingdom based on these declarations of love is short-sighted. The question oversimplifies the complexities of filial relationships, reducing love to mere words. It fails to account for the genuine affection and loyalty that might not be vocally expressed. Cordelia's honest and understated response, though true, is misinterpreted and results in her banishment. While King Lear's question arises from a sensible desire for reassurance and care from his daughters, its execution and the subsequent consequences highlight its misguided nature. The question's reliance on verbal declarations to gauge love overlooks the complexities of familial bonds and opens the door to manipulation. As a result, the question becomes a catalyst for the tragic events that unfold in the narrative. 2. How does the poet deal with flattery and sincerity in the poem? In King Lear and His Three Daughters, the poet George Wharton Edwards examines the contrasting themes of flattery and sincerity through the interactions and responses of King Lear's daughters. Flattery, which is insincere praise driven by ulterior motives, is pitted against sincerity, which embodies genuine honesty and true feelings. Flattery is demonstrated through the responses of King Lear's elder daughters, Regan and Goneril. They use elaborate language and exaggerated expressions of love to manipulate their father into securing their inheritance. Their responses are carefully crafted to appeal to King Lear's desire for affirmation and adoration, highlighting their willingness to deceive for personal gain. Sincerity, on the other hand, is embodied by Cordelia, the youngest daughter. Her response is marked by its understated and genuine nature. Cordelia refuses to engage in flattery or exaggerated declarations, choosing instead to express her love in simple and truthful terms. Her refusal to engage in falsehood stems from her commitment to integrity and her belief that actions speak louder than words. Through these contrasting approaches, the poet underscores the pitfalls of flattery and the strength of sincerity. The consequences of flattery are evident in the eventual betrayal and mistreatment of King Lear by his elder daughters, who prioritize their own interests over his well-being. In contrast, Cordelia's sincerity leads to her banishment, but it ultimately establishes her as the epitome of true love and loyalty. The poet also uses the character of the King of France to highlight the importance of sincerity. He values Cordelia's qualities and chooses to marry her despite her lack of a large dowry, appreciating her authenticity and virtue. This stands in contrast to King Lear's older daughters, whose marriages are motivated by material gain and political power. The poet addresses flattery and sincerity as central themes in the poem. Flattery is portrayed as deceptive and self-serving, leading to betrayal and destruction. Sincerity, embodied by Cordelia and admired by the King of France, is shown to be a virtue that transcends material wealth and forms the foundation of genuine love and loyalty. 3. What is filial duty? Did two daughters Regan and Goneril fulfill their filial duty? Explain. Filial duty refers to the responsibilities and obligations that children have towards their parents, particularly in terms of care, respect, support, and loyalty. It encompasses the moral and ethical obligations children have to their parents, acknowledging the sacrifices and care that parents have provided throughout their upbringing. In King Lear and his three daughters, Regan and Goneril, the elder daughters of King Lear, failed to fulfill their filial duty towards their father. Despite their initial declarations of love and devotion, their actions reveal their insincerity and self-serving motives. Instead of supporting their father in his time of need, they betray his trust, strip him of his retinue and resources, and show little compassion for his well-being. Regan and Goneril's mistreatment of their father goes against the principles of filial duty. Their actions reflect a prioritization of their own desires and ambitions over the well-being and dignity of their father. Their disregard for his emotional and physical state, as well as their exploitation of his vulnerability, demonstrate a failure to uphold the responsibilities that come with being dutiful and caring children. In contrast, Cordelia, the youngest daughter, embodies the essence of filial duty. Her sincere love and commitment towards her father are demonstrated not through grandiose declarations but through her actions. Despite her banishment and the risks involved, Cordelia sends aid to her father, provides him with comfort, and supports his cause to reclaim his kingdom. Her actions are rooted in genuine care and concern for her father's well-being, showcasing a true sense of filial duty. The failure of Regan and Goneril to fulfill their filial duty highlights their hypocrisy and self-interest, which contribute to the tragic events of the narrative. Cordelia's genuine commitment and actions showcase the essence of filial duty, underscoring the importance of authenticity and care in maintaining healthy parent-child relationships. 4. All Shakespeare's heroes suffer because of a weakness in their character. What is the weakness in part of King Lear? Explain. In Shakespeare's tragedy, King Lear, the titular character, King Lear, suffers due to a significant weakness in his character, his pride and hubris. King Lear's tragic flaw lies in his inability to accurately judge the intentions and affections of those around him, driven by his ego and the power he once held. Lear's initial demand for his daughters to declare their love for him through a public display reflects his expectation of unreserved admiration, stemming from his kingly authority. His pride blinds him to the genuine emotions of his daughters, causing him to misinterpret their responses. When Cordelia, the youngest daughter, offers an honest but understated response, Lear perceives it as a slight and an affront to his ego. This inability to handle rejection, especially from his favorite daughter, exposes his vulnerability and his lack of self-awareness. Further highlighting his pride, King Lear chooses to punish Cordelia by banishing her, unable to tolerate her refusal to conform to his expectations. His prideful actions escalate the conflict, leading to the division of his kingdom and the unraveling of the familial bonds. As the narrative unfolds, Lear's vulnerability is exploited by his elder daughters, Regan and Goneril, who manipulate his pride to their advantage. Lear's unchecked pride blinds him to their insincerity and their pursuit of power. Their betrayal and the subsequent mistreatment Lear suffers are a direct result of his inability to discern their true motives. In the course of his journey, Lear's pride is humbled as he loses his kingdom, wealth, and even his sanity. His experiences lead to a self-reflective transformation, allowing him to recognize his past mistakes and his blindness to the true nature of those around him. By the time he is reunited with Cordelia, his pride is replaced by humility, and he acknowledges his wrongs. King Lear's tragic flaw lies in his pride and arrogance, preventing him from accurately assessing the intentions of others and causing him to make misguided decisions. His vulnerability and eventual downfall result from his inability to see beyond his own self-importance, leading to a profound transformation and tragic realization. 5. Some people say that power is corruptible. How does this proverb apply in the story of King Lear? The proverb "power is corruptible" is highly applicable to the story of King Lear, where the character's pursuit and possession of power lead to corruption, deceit, and tragic consequences. The narrative vividly demonstrates how the quest for power can corrupt individuals, causing them to act against their principles and harm those around them. In the play, King Lear's initial decision to divide his kingdom and retire while retaining the title of king indicates a desire for power without responsibilities. However, his abdication sets off a chain of events where power dynamics shift, leading to betrayal and corruption. Regan and Goneril, his daughters, exploit their newfound authority, using their positions to manipulate and mistreat their father. Their thirst for power corrupts their values and leads them to deceive and betray those they should care for. Furthermore, the Duke of Cornwall and Edmund, driven by their ambitions for power, engage in ruthless actions that illustrate the proverb's truth. Cornwall's treatment of the loyal Gloucester, and Edmund's manipulation of his father's trust highlight the destructive influence of power on moral judgment. Greed for power leads to morally questionable decisions and the disregard of others' well-being. Even Lear himself, accustomed to his kingly status, faces a crisis of identity when stripped of his power and authority. His madness and suffering are a result of his inability to adapt to his changed circumstances. His realization of his own vulnerability and powerlessness serves as a poignant example of how power can blind individuals to their own weaknesses and foster a sense of invincibility. The proverb's application is most evident in the actions of Regan and Goneril, whose corruption due to newfound power contributes to the play's tragic trajectory. Their betrayal, cruelty, and manipulation of their father underscore the potential for power to erode ethical boundaries, and transform individuals into agents of corruption. The story of King Lear serves as a cautionary tale about the corrupting influence of power. Power. The character's pursuit and possession of power result in deception, betrayal, and moral decay, demonstrating how the quest for power can lead individuals to compromise their values and harm both themselves and others. 6. Refer to the legend on which this poem is based. The ballad, King Lear and His Three Daughters, is based on the ancient legend of King Lear, which predates Shakespeare's play, King Lear. The legend has its origins in early British folklore and is recorded in Geoffrey of Monmouth's Historia Regum Britanniae, History of the Kings of Britain, written around 1136. In the legend, King Lear is depicted as a legendary king of the Britons, ruling during ancient times. Much like the ballad and Shakespeare's play, the legend centers around King Lear's division of his kingdom among his daughters. In the original story, the king had three daughters, Goneril, Regan, and Cordelia. Unlike the ballad and the play, Cordelia in the legend married Agonippus, a king of the Franks, while her elder sisters married the king of Scotland and the king of Cornwall. However, the two elder sisters betrayed their father, mistreating him and leading to his eventual downfall. Cordelia, upon learning of her father's plight, rallied an army and sought to restore him to power. The legend recounts her successful effort to reinstate her father as the King of Britain. The legend of King Lear has undergone various adaptations over centuries, with Shakespeare's play being one of the most well-known. While Shakespeare's version adds complexity and depth to the characters and themes, the underlying narrative of filial betrayal and restoration remains consistent across the various adaptations. The ballad, King Lear and His Three Daughters, is just one of many renditions of this legend, and its focus on the themes of love, loyalty, betrayal, and redemption aligns with the core elements of the original story. While the specifics of the narrative may vary across adaptations, the enduring appeal of the King Lear legend lies in its exploration of human relationships, power dynamics, and the consequences of greed and deception. 7. Try to find Shakespeare's drama King Lear and share with your friends about the story. King Lear, one of William Shakespeare's most celebrated tragedies, revolves around the downfall of King Lear, a once powerful monarch, and his family. The play opens with Lear deciding to divide his kingdom among his three daughters based on their declarations of love for him. The two elder daughters, Goneril and Regan, offer extravagant praise to secure their shares, while the youngest, Cordelia, speaks honestly and is disinherited. As Goneril and Regan seize power, Lear faces their cruelty and, driven by a storm and his own madness, experiences a profound transformation. Meanwhile, Gloucester, a nobleman, faces a similar fate as his legitimate son Edgar is wrongfully accused and exiled by his illegitimate half-brother Edmund, who schemes for power. Themes of betrayal, deception, and filial ingratitude are pervasive. As the play progresses, Lear's mental state deteriorates, culminating in his reunion with Cordelia. However, their reconciliation is short-lived, as Goneril and Regan's rivalry leads to their deaths. Cordelia's execution deeply affects Lear, leading to his own death. Gloucester's suffering ends tragically too, his eyes gouged out and his life ended by his fall. King Lear explores the destructive forces of pride, power, and human nature. Shakespeare delves into themes of justice, madness, and the unraveling of social order. The play's secondary plot involves the subplot of Gloucester and his sons, highlighting the impact of deceit and manipulation on family dynamics. King Lear is a tragedy of immense emotional intensity, revealing the dark aspects of human nature and the consequences of unchecked power and familial discord. 8. Why do you think the poet didn't use Lear that Shakespeare had used 300 years before? The decision of George Wharton Edwards, the poet of King Lear and his three daughters, not to use the name Lear, that Shakespeare had employed 300 years before could be attributed to several factors, including artistic choices, variations in storytelling, and the adaptation of an existing legend. Firstly, Edwards might have wanted to create a distinct literary work that was inspired by the legend of King Lear but also had its own identity. By using a slightly different name, he could distinguish his ballad from Shakespeare's well-known play and provide a unique interpretation of the legend. Secondly, Edwards might have aimed to maintain some separation from the complexities and intricacies of Shakespeare's rendition. King Lear and his three daughters is a ballad, characterized by brevity and simplicity, whereas Shakespeare's King Lear is a full-length play that delves deeply into character development, themes, and subplots. Edwards might have opted for a more concise and focused approach in his ballad adaptation. Additionally, variations in spelling and naming were common in historical texts and adaptations. Over time, names and words evolved in spelling and pronunciation, and authors often chose to adapt names to suit their creative intentions or the linguistic conventions of their era. Lastly, Edwards might have wanted to avoid direct comparisons with Shakespeare's iconic work. By giving the protagonist a slightly altered name, he could encourage readers to approach the ballad with fresh eyes, without preconceived notions of Shakespeare's narrative. In conclusion, George Wharton Edwards might have chosen not to use the name Lear in his ballad adaptation of the King Lear legend for various reasons: to create a distinct work, to maintain simplicity, to reflect historical variations, and to avoid direct comparisons with Shakespeare's play. This decision allowed him to craft a unique interpretation of the legend while acknowledging the existing literary tradition. Best of luck.